Good afternoon out there, Awesome Radio. Thank you for joining us on 107.5 FM and 1570 AM WECU every Tuesday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is. Are you ready to learn, engage, and inspire? If so, welcome to the Let's Talk K12 Education Show. I'm your host for the next 50 minutes, Tonitia Langley, former classroom teacher from a traditional public school setting, education enthusiast, thought leader, founder, and education consultant and coach. I am so excited. Yes, I am. I am so excited to partner with you and be dedicated to the heart of our community, which is education. The goal of the Let's Talk Education Show is to let others know that in this challenging educational landscape, there is a light and it pierces the darkness. And there are educators working in the trenches, stakeholders, educational thought leaders like myself, partnering to close the gap of the school to prison pipeline with tenacity, grit, grind, while providing hope. Yes, it still exists in this very interesting educational landscape, and I'm going to get into some of that today. But anyway, I'm your host, but you and the community mean the most. I would love for you to share your suggestions of what you would love to get more information related to K-12 education, especially now during this time when there's so many things that you're seeing, so many things that you're hearing. I'll do my best to use my expertise and thought leadership to see if I'm able to unpack some of that for you, especially now. On last week's show, Vakayla Pope, Akira Moore, and Diva Johnson and I explored planting seeds of success and the Mini Millionaire Moguls program and K-12 education. And during that show, we provided tons of information regarding the topic. If you would like a recap of tools and resources, or any previous Let's Talk K-12 education shows, search hashtag Let's Talk K-12 and catch us on the replay and comment hashtag replay by heading over to Facebook, Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM. And also, I might add, we got a new logo. Yes, and it is beautiful. So head on over, look for our, I believe it's still purple and green, but it is nice. And if you don't do Facebook and you are a YouTube streamer, because I'm both, but I love myself some YouTube, you can head on over to YouTube at www.youtube.com at Awesome Radio WECU. Again, look for Awesome Radio's new logo. We're doing some things over here, guys. So we thank you for all your support. So that's a good segue. I'm going to get into our topic today and get into the meat of our discussion. I know you guys, your ears are burning as they should, but I also just would like to take a moment to say thank you. I get a lot of, when I'm out and about, sometimes we don't know that people are paying attention. Sometimes we don't know when people are listening. So I want to take this time to show gratitude to the viewers and listeners of the Let's Talk K-12 Education Show here on Awesome Radio, and to say thank you. You could be anywhere during that time. You could be listening to anything during that time. You could be viewing anything at that time. And you take the moment to stop, to pay attention to the Awesome Radio family and view and listen to the Let's Talk K-12 Education Show. And I want to say thank you so much. It warms my heart because it really takes a lot to do a show each week, to plan a show each week, and to show up when you still have life going on and things are going on. So it's always that extra push. Adults don't need validation, but it's so helpful. And you just have no idea sometimes what us Awesome Radio family may go through or experience, and we still show up as best as we can to get this information out here as professional contributors or areas of expertise or businesses. So thank you. I just had to go ahead and say that before I continued into our show today. So let's get into a quote that is in alignment with our show topic today that you see. And it says, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And that was from none other than the wonderful, infamous Nelson Mandela. May he continue to rest in peace. So let's get into our topic today. Building bridges, overcoming bias in the classroom. Ooh, don't cringe. It's okay because I'm going to unpack it, going to give you some examples. So I'm going to go over that again. Our today's topic is building bridges, overcoming bias in the classroom. So, in the light of the shifts and transitions under the new administration, this episode of the Let's Talk K12 Education Show will focus on the evolving landscape of education and how bias, yes, I said the word bias, both implicit and explicit, continues to shape classroom experiences. As policy changes, curriculum debates, and cultural shifts unfold, it is more critical than ever to equip educators with the tools to recognize and combat bias in real time. So, in this episode, my goal is to discuss how current political and social climate influence bias in the schools, and also, my other goal and what I aim to do is provide strategies for educators to maintain inclusive and equitable classrooms amid uncertainty. So, here are some thought provoking questions that I want you to press pause and reflect regarding our topic today. How can educators identify and confront their own implicit biases to create a more inclusive classroom environment? And here's another thought provoker. What are some subtle ways bias can show up in classroom interactions, grading, or discipline policies? Yeah, lean in and come on in. Without further ado, let's get into our topic. And yes, I'm doing another solo show today. Again, so our show topic is building the bridges and overcoming biases in the classroom. So, as a thought leader, education consultant, and coach, and the host of the Let's Talk K12 Education Show, I'm committed to addressing the biases that shape school climate and culture, both overt and implicit. With shifting policies, curriculum debates, and cultural transitions under each new administration, bias can manifest in discipline disparities, academic expectations, student opportunities, creating an inequitable learning environment. Yes, I know it is a lot to digest, and sometimes we don't like to own it, but we're going to talk about it today. Okay. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic, implicit bias in the classroom. As many of you know, I've spent a significant portion of my career working and consulting in Title I rural schools, serving predominantly Black and Brown student populations. This experience has given me a firsthand look at the challenges and these students face, and the subtle ways in which implicit biases, often unintentional, can impact their educational journey. So I'm going to back up for that one. The subtle ways, often intentional, can impact their educational equity, their educational journey. We're going to talk about it. So, beyond my classroom experience, I've also had the privilege of serving as an appointed beginning teacher mentor in my role. I work closely with novice teachers, many of whom are just starting their careers and may not have had extensive experience working with students from marginalized backgrounds. One of the most important aspects of my mentorship is guiding these new educators to examine their own potential implicit biases. It's not about calling anyone out or assigning blame. It's about fostering self awareness and creating a safe space for reflection. We all have biases. They're a natural part of how our brains work. But when we're working with students, especially students who are already facing systemic challenges, it's essential to be aware of these biases and actively work to mitigate their impact. For example, a new teacher might unconsciously assume that a student from a low income family is less motivated or less capable simply because of societal stereotypes. Or they might misinterpret cultural differences in communication styles as disrespect or lack of engagement. My passion for this topic stems from a deep belief in the potential of every child. I've seen firsthand how implicit bias can create subtle yet significant barriers to student success. And I've also seen, and this is the part that I love about how I like to provide solutions. I've also seen the incredible transformation that can happen when educators become aware of their biases and commit to creating truly equitable and inclusive classrooms. That's what we're going to explore today on the show. This platform is dedicated to exposing and addressing these biases, providing educators, parents, and students with actionable solutions to build more inclusive, equitable, and culturally responsive schools by challenging systemic barriers and fostering open, solution driven conversations. So, let me take you to school and define the terms that will be used in today's shows. It's very important to have a clear understanding of what implicit biases are, especially as they relate to educators. So here's a breakdown. What are implicit biases? Unconscious associations. Implicit biases are unconscious and are automatic attitudes, beliefs, or stereotypes that we hold about certain groups of people. These biases can affect our perceptions, actions, and decisions without us even realizing. Now, I have something that I want to add to that, but let me get right into this piece so that we're clear on what this title is and what this show is going to be about today's topic. Biases are not the same as prejudice, okay? It's important to distinguish implicit bias from conscious prejudice or racism. Implicit biases are often unintentional and can even conflict with our consciously held beliefs. We all have them to some degree. So, learn pervasive. Implicit biases are learned over time through exposure to societal messages, cultural stereotypes, and personal experiences. They are pervasive and can affect everyone, including well intentioned individuals. So, I'm going to dig a little deeper with that, but let me just add my 2 cents in, and you're probably going to hear it again throughout the show. The reason that I wanted to talk about this show today, the reason that I wanted to talk about biases, the reason I wanted to differentiate what a bias is over being prejudiced is because of the climate that we're in, the information that we're digesting, what we're seeing on social media, what we're hearing on the radio stations, what we're reading in articles under the new administration, what we're trying to prepare for to get ready for what may be down the pipelines. So I'm just here as a thought leader to, first of all, provide education, to provide understanding for you to get the information. And also, disclaimer, this my area of expertise is as a thought leader in education, but I also challenge you to do the research on your own and to clearly think about what it is that I'm talking about. Okay. So, how do implicit biases manifest in K-12 educators? Differential treatment. Educators may unconsciously treat students from certain groups differently, even if they don't intend to. This can manifest in attention, giving more attention to some students than others. Praise and encouragement, offering more praise and encouragement to certain students. As it pertains to discipline students from certain groups more harshly. Academic expectations, holding lower academic expectations for some students. And here's the term microaggressions. You've heard them. So these are subtle, often unintentional, verbal or non-verbal behaviors that communicate negative or hostile messages to individuals from marginalized groups. Examples include, not exclusive to, but include commenting on a student's accent or, ooh, how well they speak English. Okay. You know what I'm saying. Making assumptions about a student's background or family based upon what they see, hear, heard, or have digested as it pertains to social media nowadays. I could get a lot into propaganda, but that's a whole other different show. Dismissing or minimizing a student's experiences with discrimination. So I do want to break that one down. So that means if little Charlie comes to you, and it could be Black, Hispanic, it could be a white kid, okay? It doesn't matter. We're talking about these biases can come up because of any race that's talking anything in media now, social media, in the news, on the radio, what we hear when we have our discussions and conversations with our families. Okay. Uh, so they're coming to you and they're telling you, hey, Miss Such and Such, do you know that little Charlie is making this comment to me? And they're telling you this and it's coming to you. And you're, oh, little Charlie, you're just being oversensitive. That's not what they meant. Sometimes you may need to stop and do a little bit more investigating, especially now and where we are in the social climate based upon several different things that's going on with the new administration. I'm just saying, okay? Don't underestimate it. Always take the time to investigate. My mother used to always tell me when she was raising us, and I can hear her so clearly, rest her soul. She would say, you know, Candy, when kids are coming to tell you something, you need to stop and listen. Don't just be dismissive and say, if they're telling you there's a big bear on the back porch, she said, you may need to go check it out. So I'm just kind of taking Queen's words and saying, you may need to check it out. I'm just saying. All right. Curriculum and instruction. Implicit biases can also influence the curriculum and instructional materials that educators use. This can lead to limited representation of diverse perspectives and experiences, perpetuation of stereotypes in textbooks or examples, lack of culturally relevant teaching practices. I'll get into that later because I got 5 minutes before the break and I still have a whole lot more to go. So stay focused, girls. Stay focused. All right. Why is it important to address implicit biases? Equity and fairness. All students deserve to be treated fairly and have equal opportunities to learn and succeed regardless of their background. Student well-being. When students experience bias in the classroom, it can negatively impact their self-esteem, motivation, and mental health. Creating inclusive classroom. You've heard me say this tons and tons and tons of times, and I'm going to continue to say it tons and tons of times because I'm passionate about it. Addressing implicit bias is essential for creating inclusive and welcoming classrooms where students feel safe, respected, and valued. Okay, so again, I want to touch on the fact that I don't want you to walk away from this that I'm making this a black, white, or brown thing. I'm making this a people thing. I'm making this a race thing because it's not only blacks and browns hearing things in the news, seeing types of stats. Everyone can be impacted. Everyone can develop biases. Every population and race, ethnicity, cultural background can be impacted. So we're unpacking it about building bridges, overcoming biases in the classroom. So before we go to break, what can educators do? Educators can self-reflect, engage in ongoing self-reflection to identify their own implicit biases. What can they attempt to do? Even though it's one more thing to add to their to-do list, get education training, participate in professional development opportunities on implicit biases and culturally responsive teaching. Challenging assumptions is what educators can do. Actively challenge your own assumptions and stereotypes about different groups of students. Building relationships. Build strong relationships with students from diverse backgrounds to better understand their experience and perspectives. What can educators do? Create inclusive curriculum. Use curriculum and instructional materials that are diverse and culturally relevant. Now, I can tell you from the standpoint from being a classroom teacher and now as an education consultant and coach, and currently I am a remediation specialist with 3-5 students here in Pitt County. I can tell you, I know you're like, listen, we have a lot of curriculum to push through. We have a lot of programs that we're learning that our administrator is pushing through. Miss Langley, thought leader, education enthusiast, sweetheart, where do you think I'm going to squeeze this in at? I get it. I understand. I'm not just one that's pushing curriculum. I'm not a salesperson, but I'm an education enthusiast and thought leader. So I get it. I know it's one more thing for you to consider, but I'm going to say, please make it one more thing that you consider, especially during these times. If you can find a quick article, if you can ask them to bring in an artifact and have a quick discussion for show and tell, there are quick ways that you can do this, okay? And not make it where it's another task added on your already heavy plate. I get it, okay? I'm just saying. So seeking feedback. So if you have been the source of someone coming to tell you, ooh, there's chitter chatter about something that you said, or ooh, there's chitter chatter about the way that you act. Ooh, there's chitter chatter in the background at the water cooler on teacher break time about something that you have said, and this is what people are thinking. What I'm going to do is challenge you to seek feedback. Ask colleagues or students for feedback on your teaching practices and interactions with students. And then don't take it as constructive feedback. If that's what they're saying, stop, take note. Because again, I just talked to you about implicit biases. Sometimes you're doing it or saying it or behaving or responding and you don't even know it. And sometimes it can be because of what you have been taken into your system. It's what you've been using your eyes and eye gate and ear gates to take in. And you're not even meaning any harm with the things that you say and how you respond to certain people and certain things. So ask people to give you some feedback and have the quiet conversations, okay? Especially if there's chitter chatter. And teachers and educators in the community know what I mean when I say chitter chatter, okay? That's our version of water cooler conversation. But sweetheart, we don't ever have time to be around the water cooler. It's usually, in the class at lunch, when we have our grade level meetings or things of that nature. So, I'm having too much fun. I got through most of the material, but listen, get ready to take us into break. You're listening to the Let's Talk K12 Education on Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM and 1570 AM, where we make K12 educations everyone's community business. We'll be right back after this short message with more inspiration for the world of K12 education. See you back while we continue to talk about building bridges and overcoming biases in the classroom. Welcome back to Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM and 1570 AM. Yeah, I got to add it. Where we got a new logo, guys, and it looks beautiful. It's amazing. So you can find us here talking about all things education every Tuesday on Let's Talk K12 Education at 3 to 4 p.m. You can find us, hashtag Let's Talk K12. You can find us at Facebook, Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM and 1570 AM with the purple and green logo. You can also find us on YouTube at www.youtube.com, Awesome Radio WECU, again with the purple and green logo and our new design. And you can email us here at Let's Talk K12 Education at gmail.com with any topics that you would like to have me talk about on the show. And I promise you, I will do my very best in my area of expertise, all things K12 education, to unpack it and discuss it. Let's get back into it. Okay. So, before the break, I defined and explored and did a light dive into implicit biases in K-12 education. And again, I want to reiterate, we're not spreading propaganda here. The goal of this show is to produce light in darkness, is to give thought leadership around some things that are happening with K-12 trends, what we're seeing and hearing, and to do my best. And my responsibility is to unpack it, to teach it, so to speak, because that's what I am to the court. I'm a teacher. So we talked about how they are formed. We talked about what they are and how it's different from being prejudiced, and how biases can be formed in any race, in any culture, anyone from any socioeconomic background, and how they will transform into our K-12 settings. So now we're going to talk about explicit biases. So we talked about implicit biases. Now we're going to shed a little bit of light on what explicit biases is. Okay. So what are explicit biases? And they can become, again, from either race, stemming from what is portrayed and digested during our current climate. Okay. So explicit bias in K-12 education refers to conscious and intentional prejudices, stereotypes, or discriminatory actions that negatively impact students based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, ability, or other identifying factors. Unlike implicit bias, which operates unconsciously, that you don't even know that you're doing it, explicit bias is deliberate and often expressed through words, policies, or behaviors. Okay. Here are some examples of explicit biases in schools. Discriminatory discipline practices. That means there is unequal enforcement of rules where students of color, particularly Black and Latino students, face harsher punishments than their white peers for similar behaviors. Unequal academic expectations. Teachers openly express lower expectations for students based on race, gender, or background, which can affect confidence and performance. Segregated programs and tracking. Placing students from marginalized groups in lower academic tracks or excluding them from gifted programs due to bias selection criteria. I'm going to pause right there for just a second. I'm going to insert something in here. And I'm going to do it lightly. I will do it this way. I am familiar with a particular family in a particular district, in a particular school setting, with a particular guidance counselor in high school, that these particular students would go to them to seek guidance on going maybe to a university. And what was told to me was based, and I'm not going to say why the guidance counselor made these statements or if they were implicit or explicit biases. I'm just going to say it looks like, it seemed like. I will infer or assume as to what that was. But according to what the students were telling me, certain students were directed to trade schools and community colleges, and it almost felt to them as they were discouraged from trying to attend four-year universities and colleges. That is an explicit bias. Now, these were different types of students, but students in a marginalized group, okay? And so that's a segregated programs and tracking. That's an example. Culturally exclusive curriculum. Deliberate exclusion of diverse histories, perspectives, and lessons, reinforcing narrow and biased view of history and knowledge. Oh my goodness. We're not even going to talk about what all is happening with the curriculums in Florida, with books that they're banning, that they're saying get out of the libraries, do not put this in the curriculum. I can talk from my own personal experience that I was hired on as a professional learning specialist with a very big educational company. and that they were giving their experiences and what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go in and do a presentation, sell a middle grades ELA program that they had. They had several programs, but I can tell you they were up against a lot of policies because of some of the materials they decided to use. And they were saying, no, you can't use that. And they were getting a lot of kickback with some of the books that they wanted to use, which was really trying to employ teachers to do culturally responsive teaching. Okay. All right, so let's talk about what that impact is on school climate and student success when we have explicit biases. That means that you're just not doing it by mistake, unintentionally, by what you've seen or heard. You're being very, very intentional about what you say and how you say it, because you mean what you say. What they say, with your chest out. Okay. When you are partaking in explicit biases, this is the impact on school climate and student success: lower self-esteem and academic performance for marginalized students, increased dropout rates due to feelings of exclusion or mistreatment, polarization among students and staff, leading to a divided school culture. Oh my gosh, before break, I really wish I could probably do a whole show on that one. But I came from the positive side of not polarizing students and staff. And we had a dynamic school culture and what it did to turn a turnaround experience right here in my county. Legal and policy changes when explicit discrimination is reported and addressed. Okay. Addressing explicit biases: implement anti-bias training for educators and administrators, establish clear policies that promote equity in discipline, curriculum, and student opportunities, encourage student advocacy and parental involvement to hold schools accountable, promote media literacy to help students and educators critically engage with information that fuels biases, and an action plan to combat explicit biases in K-12 education. So I have that action plan. I might have to upload it later, but this action plan to combat explicit biases in K-12 education, the objective of that is to identify, address, and eliminate explicit biases in schools by fostering an inclusive, equitable, and culturally responsive learning environment for all students. I could really mash on it, but got to get ready to take us to break. So you are listening to the Let's Talk K-12 Education show on Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM and 1570 AM, where we make K-12 education everyone's community business. We'll be right back after this short message with more inspiration for the world of K-12 education. And we will continue building bridges, overcoming bias in the classroom. See you after the break. Welcome back to Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM and 1570 AM. You can find us here talking about all things education every Tuesday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, I said Eastern Standard Time because we've got some people that's viewing us on the web. So, where we're talking about Let's Talk K-12 Education. You can find us at hashtag Let's Talk K-12. Where else can you find us? On Facebook at Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM with the purple and green logo. And we have a new design. And you can also find us streaming on YouTube at www.youtube.com, Awesome Radio WECU, again with the purple and green logo. You can email us at letstalk-k12education@gmail.com with your topics that you would like to have discussed on the show. And there's a lot happening now, I'm just saying. So if you wanted to send in your suggestion, you can. And I just have to give a shout out to another awesome family member here, which is Dr. Glenn Johnson. He does a phenomenal job with sending me some ideas. He sent me some really nice ones. Okay. That when I've got some time, I'm going to look through those, and either I'm going to do solo show or see if he wants to, partner with me again on some of those. Very nice information. Can't wait to dive into it. And possibly bring them up on the show. So anyway, so we've talked about implicit biases, we talked about explicit biases, and their effects on K-12 education. We've defined them, we've given examples, we've talked about how they're formed, we've talked about how they impact every race, every culture, but how they're mainly more impactful on marginalized uh, backgrounds, marginalized races, marginalized populations of people. And, marginalized means, the blacks, the browns, the women, socioeconomic. So we're talking about, when we talk about marginalized, not insulting your intelligence at all, but I know in education we use a lot of acronyms, we use a lot of educational terms and words, and I'm not going to be the thought leader that says, oh, they know what that means. No. And I'm not going to make you always look up what a term or something means. I'm going to do my very best to unpack it, define it, and give examples to help you understand it. So we talked about all of those, but my style. Even though I may bring up some really heavy topics and that requires a lot of unpacking, sometimes it may even be a little uncomfortable. This one may be to some people. It's not really to me, because I'm all about putting the horse in front of the cart and saying, okay, where can we drive? Where can we go? How can we get there? What do we recognize? What can we fix? What solutions can we provide? What way can we get people to think about, hey, you don't think that you'll think this way, or you don't think you'll be impacted? You're wrong. Anyone can be impacted. Anyone that's taking in and digesting information can be impacted. But I'm solution driven. So I'm going to use this part of the show. And I'm going to give you a quick quiz, okay? Teacher style. So pay attention. So I'm going to ask some questions on some information that I just shared, pop quiz style, to see if you were listening. So were you listening? All right, so here we go. So let's break down biases. The Let's Talk K12 education community, here we go. Before we close today's discussion on overcoming biases in the classroom, let's start with a quick interactive pop quiz review. Grab a pen, your phone, or just answer in your head. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Question number 1 is true, false. As long as a teacher treats all students equally, bias is not an issue in the classroom. Think about it. Does equal treatment always means fair treatment? That's a hint. 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. Do you get it? Are you thinking about it? So I read it again. As long as a teacher treats all students equally, bias is not an issue in the classroom. Think about one of my biases that I talked about earlier in the show. That's another hint. False. Bias is unconscious, and treating students equally doesn't always mean they are treated equitably. Yeah, okay. Here's another question. See if you were paying attention. You ready? This is a multiple choice question. So question number 2 is, which of the following is an example of implicit bias in education? A, expecting certain students to misbehave based on past experience. B, assuming students from specific backgrounds won't excel in certain subjects. C, calling on some students more than others without realizing it. Or D, all of the above. Hint, it happens in subtle ways. So I'll go over that again. Which of the following is an example of implicit bias in education? A, expecting certain students to misbehave based on past experiences. B, assuming students from specific backgrounds won't excel in certain subjects. C, calling on some students more often than others without even realizing it. Or D, All of the above. I hope you were listening and paying attention to implicit biases. And I hope, my fingers are crossed, that you chose D, is all of the above. Implicit biases can show up in behavior expectations, subject assumptions, and classroom engagement. I have question number 3, and I hope that you have 2 out of 2 right now. That's what I'm hoping that you, because you was listening and paying attention. Here's question number 3, true or false? Students don't really notice bias in the classroom. Most of it goes over their heads. What do you think? Do students see and feel they're being treated differently? So I ask the question again. Students don't really notice in the classroom. Most of it goes over their heads. What do you think? Do students see and feel when they're being treated differently? That is false. Students notice bias all the time, even when adults don't realize it. And I'm telling you right now, if I had the time to teach on that one, I used to tell my mentees, just because you don't think they know, they know. You might can jive some adults. You can't jive those kids because they have to be around. Their whole thing is feeling, because they're entrusting us to provide them with what they need. So they go by a different compass than we do. So yeah, 9 times out of 10, even if they don't say anything to you and other adults aren't checking you, students know. All right. So here's the final question, and it's a fill in the blank. Overcoming bias in the classroom is not just about individual teachers. It requires blank. I'll read the question again. Overcoming bias in the classroom is not just about individual teachers. It requires blank. And here are the choices. A one-time training. B, an ongoing commitment to awareness and action. C, ignoring the issue and hoping for the best. Lock in your answer right now. And hint, this is a lifelong process. So I hope that you chose B. It's an ongoing commitment to awareness and action. Overcoming bias is a continuous process and not a one-time fix. And again, we all have them based upon how we were raised, based upon the communities we come from, based upon the communities that we visited, based upon our family beliefs, based upon how we were treated or not, how we were treated fairly or how we were unfairly treated. So biases can happen and they can come through explicitly or implicitly. We keep them to ourselves and just kind of behave as such, and don't think that people are aware. Oh, that's how you think or that's how you feel. They do. Okay. So now let's transition. That's a good transition. So we did a little pop quiz. And if I come and check your papers, and when I see you out in the community, I want you to say, Tonitia, honey, I made a 100 on that pop quiz. So I want you to tell me when I see you, or when you connect with me online, let me know that you did a good job on the pop quiz. Then I'm going to give you an air high five or a hug, and I'm going to say, keep up the good work, and spread it in the community for us. Okay. So now let's transition into some myths. See how good you guys do with this. I hope you did well with the pop quiz. So now that we've warmed up, let's bust some common myths about bias in education and learn how to truly build bridges in the classroom. So to close out the Let's Talk K12 Education show, let's bust some myths about overcoming biases in the classroom and replace them with truths that help build bridges toward inclusive education. So here's myth number 1. I don't have biases. I treat all my students the same. The truth is, everyone has biases, often unconsciously. The key is recognizing them and making intentional efforts to counteract their influence on teaching practices. Myth number 2. Addressing biases means lowering expectations for some students. Truth is, overcoming biases actually means raising expectations for all students by ensuring they receive the support, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed. Myth number 3. Diversity and inclusion are only relevant in certain subjects like social studies or English. Truth is, every subject, math, science, even PE, benefits from inclusive practices that reflect diverse perspective, experiences, and contributions. Okay? How you doing? How are you doing with the myths and understanding the truth? Are you doing pretty good? Awesome. Here's myth number 4. Students don't notice bias in the classroom. Now, you guys should get this one. Truth is, kids are highly observant. They notice who gets called on, who gets disciplined, and whose voices are amplified. Acknowledging this helps build trust and equity in the classroom. I could go on that one myth for the next 30 to 40 minutes. In my experiences as a teacher leader, in as a school building leader and in the district as a classroom leader, I used to reiterate that all the time. They see it, they notice it, guys. Please don't let you be the chitter chatter with that, because that's an easy fix. Okay, if little Johnny, who does everything, you point him out, little Sarah does nothing, but you let her slide, you're making a big mistake and you're going to damage the culture in your classroom. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm gonna move on from that one. They notice it. Okay, some may notice it and are quiet and reserved and not say anything. Some are vocal. Now, sometimes, now let me say this too about our little sweet ones, our little sweet K12 friends. They are honest, but sometimes some can over exaggerate. But if they talk about it, whether it's in an inflamed type way, if they bring it up, it's more than likely being done. I'm just saying, just keep that in mind, okay? Don't go away and say, I didn't know, because your thought leader here on Awesome Radio on the Let's Talk K12 Education Show, I'm doing my very best to help inform you and educate you and break this information down, okay? We have enough going on. And that's part of my roles and responsibilities, is to try to use this platform, my voice, to help give you some solutions. All right. Myth number 5, talking about bias and equity will make students uncomfortable. Truth is, silence can be more harmful than discomfort. When done thoughtfully, these conversations help students develop critical thinking, empathy, and a sense of fairness. Myth number 6, families and communities don't want schools involved in these discussions. The truth is, many families appreciate schools addressing biases because it prepares students for real world diversity. Engaging families in the conversations strengthens relationships and student success. I don't care what anybody says. Okay? I will stand 10 toes down, chest all the way out, to stand by that particular truth. Okay? Myth number 7, overcoming bias is a one-time training, not an ongoing process. Now, again, you guys should get this one correct, because we just went over in our pop quiz. Hint, hint. Truth is, addressing bias is a continuous journey of self-reflection, learning, and adapting teaching practices to ensure all students, not just the marginalized, which are always talked about in society, talked about in social media, talked about in the news, but all students. So if they don't come from marginalized population, guys, doesn't mean that they don't experience biases too. Okay, putting it out there so you can't say, I didn't know. Tonitia told you, okay? Myth number 8, bias is only a problem for certain teachers, not me. That's her problem over there in B12, not in A2. The truth is, bias is a human trait, not a character flaw. Bias is a human trait, not a character flaw. I'm going to say it one more time, because they say when you say something 3 times, people usually get it. Bias is a human trait, not a character flaw. Okay? Even the most well-intentioned educators can hold unconscious biases, but self-awareness and intentional strategies can help minimize their impact. Myth number 9, if I focus too much on inclusivity, I'll be neglecting academic rigor. Truth is, Culturally responsive teaching enhances academic achievement by making learning more meaningful, relevant, engaging for all students. Inclusivity and high expectations go hand in hand. Okay. Myth number 10, students from marginalized backgrounds just need to work harder to succeed. The truth is, many students face systemic barriers that affect their educational experiences. Providing equitable support, resources, and opportunities ensures that all students can reach their full potential. I just went over the fact that I know due to views and sometimes people trying to spread propaganda, when it comes to biases, they only want to talk about the marginalized populations. But I'm here to tell you, as a thought leader for Let's Talk K-12 education, all students can be impacted and affected by biases. Okay, rich, white, um, other students from other socio-ethnic and cultural backgrounds can be impacted, okay? But it's just the hot, groovy conversations usually on the marginalized. So breaking down biases isn't about placing blame. It's about taking responsibility for creating learning environments where every student feels valued, supported, and empowered to succeed. And educators are equipped with supernatural powers to win in and out of classrooms, resulting in positive student outcomes. I have this whole great big strategies for overcoming biases, a structured guide with examples and resources for strategies for overcoming biases in the K-12 classroom, but I may have to upload that. I'll see how I can get that done. So let's get ready to close on out. So thank you for joining me today in the exploration of building bridges, overcoming biases in the classroom. Thank you for joining me today on this important exploration of building bridges and overcoming biases in the classroom. As a result, as an education thought leader and consultant, I've seen firsthand the transformative power of creating truly inclusive and equitable learning environments. It's not always easy. Confronting our own biases can be uncomfortable, and systemic change can take time with sustained effort, but the work is absolutely essential. Remember, building bridges isn't about ignoring our differences, it's about understanding them, respecting them, and valuing the richness they bring to our classrooms and our communities. Overcoming biases isn't a one time fix, it's an ongoing journey of self reflection, learning, and growth. It requires a commitment to challenging our own assumptions, listening to diverse perspectives, and actively working to dismantle the barriers that prevent all students from reaching their full potential. I encourage you to take what you've learned today and put it into action. Start by reflecting on your own biases. So, walking in my passion, sharing my thought leadership around K-12 topics. I have an ask, a brief call to action. So I want you to share this in your networks if you've enjoyed it. Tell people about the show. Share the awesome radio family. We're doing a humongous job of getting information that's important out to our community. So this is Tonitia Langley. I'm your educational enthusiast, thought leader, and show host for Let's Talk K-12 Education every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, stay well and continue to make educational equity everyone's community business. Thank you for tuning in today on Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM and 1570 AM from the Let's Talk K-12 Education Show. See you next week.